It was a Sunday morning, sunlight slipping through my kitchen blinds, coffee warm between my palms, when I saw the post that changed everything. Taylor's face. Ryan's arm wrapped tightly around her waist. And the caption. We've poured our hearts into this. Introducing Memora, a platform that brings your memories to life. Couldn't be more proud to launch this with my girl lightbulb sparkling heart #startuplife. My breath caught in my throat. There it was. The name. The concept. The tagline. Even the exact mock-up I'd shown them 2 weeks earlier, down to the soft beige background and gold accent font I'd obsessed over for months. I stared at the screen, waiting for it to change. For it to reveal itself as a joke, a cruel mistake. But it didn't. It just sat there, bright and polished and smiling in betrayal. Ryan. My boyfriend of over a year. Taylor. My best friend since college. And Memora, my startup. My soul project. My late-night idea turned blueprint. The thing I had spent months shaping in silence before trusting the 2 people closest to me with its details. I should have been furious. I should have thrown my coffee across the room, screamed into the walls, texted them in all caps. But I didn't. Because while they were busy launching my idea in public, they didn't know what I had already filed in private. And that was about to change everything. My name is Alexis Carter. I'm 29 years old, and for most of my life, I've been someone who builds quietly. I was never the loudest voice in the room, never the one posting motivational quotes or countdowns to launch day. I liked my work clean. Precise. Thoughtful. And personal. I grew up in Miami, raised by a single mom who taught me 3 things: how to use color theory like a weapon, how to back up every creative idea with a legal trail, and how to smile politely while protecting your boundaries like a fortress. My mom wasn't just an intellectual property attorney, she was a woman who had learned, the hard way, how easily people confuse kindness with permission. I went to art school, paid my dues in agencies, freelanced for years under my own brand, and slowly started building a client list that felt like mine. I worked hard, but I dreamed harder. Not of fame. Not of followers. But of making something that mattered. Something that could live on its own. Memora was born out of grief. The year before, my grandmother passed away. She had been the keeper of our stories, the family historian, the one who saved postcards, voicemails, crumpled birthday cards from the 90s. After she was gone, we were left with scraps. Photos with no audio. Memories with no movement. One night, I stayed up late, sketching on the back of a grocery list. I imagined a digital book, a memory book, but alive. Pages that turned like video, voices embedded in photos, handwritten notes that glowed when tapped. A space where someone could flip through a chapter of your life and feel like they were in it. I didn't tell anyone for the first 3 months. Not because I didn't believe in it, but because it felt sacred. I prototyped in silence, mocked up interfaces, researched user experiences that triggered nostalgia and comfort. I bought the domain. I made a private Figma file. I wrote the copy for the landing page at 2 in the morning, then rewrote it 3 times before letting anyone see it. And then one night, over tea in my mother's apartment, I told her everything. She didn't gush. She didn't cry. She simply reached into her briefcase, handed me a blank trademark application, and said, "You trust people, baby. I love that about you. But trust doesn't stop you from getting your signature down first." So I filed. Quietly. I filed a trademark for the name Memora, registered the brand, and submitted a provisional patent for the interactive digital memory book platform, specifically the structure that allowed multimedia integration into touch-responsive digital pages. Only after all that, when I felt ready and safe, did I finally show it to 2 people who I thought deserved to see it first: my boyfriend, Ryan, and my best friend, Taylor. We sat at my apartment on a rainy Thursday night. I cooked pasta, poured wine, and opened my laptop. Ryan leaned in, impressed. Taylor's eyes widened with every slide. Ryan said, "Lex, this is brilliant." Taylor said, "Oh my God, you have to do this." I felt so seen. So supported. I told them I wasn't launching yet, just collecting feedback, polishing, thinking through marketing. Ryan said, "Whenever you're ready, I'll help build a buzz." Taylor said, "I'll design the brand deck. You know I've got your back." And I believed them. I really, truly believed them. It didn't even occur to me to suspect that both of them, him, who kissed me goodnight, and her, who called me soul twin since sophomore year, would take what I showed them in trust and turn it into a launch of their own. For the first few days after I shared Memora, everything felt normal, better than normal, even. Ryan was affectionate, warm, a little extra attentive. Taylor texted me a meme the next morning that said, "God gives his best ideas to the quiet girls." I remember smiling at that. I even screenshot it, thinking maybe I'd include it in my pitch deck one day, as some kind of poetic irony. But that feeling didn't last. The first crack came in the form of subtle absence. Taylor started canceling things, dinners, work sessions, even our regular wine and Pinterest night where we'd brainstorm side gigs or critique each other's client designs. When I asked if everything was okay, she just said she was really slammed and trying to unplug a little. Fair. I understood burnout. I told her to rest. Ryan, on the other hand, was still showing up, but something had shifted. We used to talk ideas constantly. Late at night, he'd rub my shoulders while I adjusted margins or played with color palettes, occasionally chiming in with ideas about branding or user onboarding. He wasn't a designer, but he had a good eye. He was always enthusiastic. Encouraging. After I shared Memora, that stopped. Every time I brought it up, he'd nod, maybe mutter cool, then immediately shift the topic. One night, I showed him a sample animation I'd worked on, video integrated into a flipping book page, and he barely looked up from his phone. Said, "Yeah, I think Taylor showed me that last week." Then froze. Just for a second. Like he didn't mean to say it. "Wait, Taylor?" I asked. "You guys talked about it?" He shrugged. "Just in passing. She's got opinions. You know how she is." It didn't sit right, but I let it go. Because what else could I do? Accuse my boyfriend of having secret design meetings with my best friend? Still, something tightened in my chest. A few days later, I got my second red flag. I called Taylor on a random Tuesday, just to vent about a weird client. She didn't answer. I texted. No reply. Later that night, I opened Instagram and saw her story, a boomerang from a fancy cocktail bar in Betrayal, 2 glasses clinking. In the background, blurry but undeniable, was Ryan's watch. The black leather strap. The bronze dial. I knew it like I knew my own name. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't say anything that night. Or the next. I told myself maybe it was a group outing. Maybe they ran into each other. Maybe it didn't mean anything. I tried to believe it, even as my gut started whispering things I didn't want to hear. But then came the post. That Sunday morning, I was curled up on the couch with coffee and my laptop, half editing a freelance brochure, half watching the light move across the hardwood floor, when I opened Instagram and saw the announcement. A smiling photo of Taylor and Ryan, standing side by side in front of a modern, minimal website mockup. We've poured our hearts into this. Introducing Memora, a new platform that brings your memories to life. Couldn't be more proud to build this with my girl lightbulb sparkling heart. I dropped my coffee. It splashed across the rug, staining the edge of my sketchbook, but I didn't even flinch. I couldn't move. My hands were frozen, phone still clutched between them, screen glowing with betrayal. Everything was mine. The name. The concept. The product description. Even the goddamn tagline. I clicked through the photos in silence. They were standing in front of a banner I didn't design, but it looked almost exactly like the one I'd mocked up in my branding folder. The same serif font. The same warm neutral palette. The exact aesthetic I'd spent weeks developing from scratch. I went to their new website. It was live. Fully launched. Complete with a press release announcing seed funding from Ryan's Family Foundation. $100,000. They'd taken my idea, pitched it as their own, and launched it with a six-figure backing from people who had once toasted to Alexis over dinner. And they were dating. There was no denying it now. They were tagged in each other's photos. The captions were nauseating. She's been my muse for years. Couldn't imagine doing this with anyone else. I felt like the world had tilted slightly off its axis. Not just because they had stolen from me, but because they had pretended to love me while doing it. Ryan had held me in his arms, kissed me, told me he was proud of me, while planning to erase me. Taylor, who once cried with me over cheap wine when I got laid off from my agency job, had taken my trust and weaponized it. I couldn't breathe. My body was shaking, but not from grief. From clarity. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a blurred line or bad communication. This was theft. This was betrayal. This was calculated. And I should have been devastated. But I wasn't. Because while they were drafting fake press releases, I had been filing real ones. While they were designing promo graphics, I was securing IP rights. While they were preparing to launch, I had already legally claimed everything they were standing on. And now, it was time to remind them of that. I didn't text them. Not Taylor. Not Ryan. Not even some vague, cutting message on social media like I'd seen other women do in this exact situation, exposing cheaters and thieves with timestamps and fury. No. I closed Instagram, poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, and walked into my bedroom. Slid open the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. Reached for the manila folder labeled in thick black Sharpie. Memora, legal filings. Inside, a copy of the federal trademark registration for Memora, filed 3 months earlier in my full legal name. A signed receipt from the United States Patent and Trademark Office. A provisional patent application for Dynamic Interactive Digital Memory Book Interface with Embedded Multimedia. Screenshots of design timelines. Timestamped Figma links. Original PSD and video files dated back 6 months. And emails to myself, with every version sent as encrypted drafts, unopened, legally valid evidence of authorship. This wasn't a contingency plan. This was the plan. Because the day I told my mother about Memora, she didn't pat my head or say, "How exciting." She sat me down, calmly, and said, "Do you want to own your idea, or do you want to be the girl who thought of something before someone else stole it?" I had laughed. Nervously. But I'd listened. She helped me fill out the forms. Gave me the name of a lawyer friend in New York who reviewed my provisional patent application for free. She showed me how to timestamp every draft, how to maintain digital trails that would stand up in court. At the time, I thought I was being overly cautious. I remember even saying, Taylor and Ryan would never do something like that. Now, I was grateful for my own naivete, because it had forced me to prepare like the world would fall apart. And now it had. By that afternoon, I was on the phone with Ms. Nguyen, my mother's colleague who handled IP enforcement cases. I forwarded her everything. The launch post. The website. Their branding deck. My filed documents. She responded within 15 minutes. "You're covered. We'll draft the cease and desist today." It wasn't anger I felt as I read her message. It was precision. Cold, surgical clarity. They thought I'd be heartbroken. They thought they could build something on top of my silence. But what they didn't realize was that I had built walls before I ever opened the door. They'd launched a business. But I'd filed a fortress. And I was done being quiet. The cease and desist letter was sent at 9:12 a.m. on a Wednesday. It was precise, calm, and backed with documentation that could snap the spine of any early-stage startup. Filed by a respected intellectual property firm, signed off by a specialist who'd gone toe-to-toe with tech giants, and delivered via email, certified mail, and, because I wanted to leave no room for misunderstanding, personally delivered to the Memora HQ address listed on their website. The content was clear. Immediate cease of operations. Removal of all branding, materials, and product references infringing on the Memora trademark. Termination of ongoing fundraising using stolen IP. And if they failed to comply within 10 business days, we'd file suit, federal level. I didn't post about it. Didn't warn them. Didn't hint. Let the silence echo. Day 1, no response. Day 2, Taylor called me 3 times. I didn't pick up. Day 3, she sent a voice message, her voice trembling, a strange cocktail of guilt and indignation. Lex, can we talk, please? I think there's been a misunderstanding. We didn't know you filed anything. We didn't think it was formal. Formal? I replayed that word, then deleted the message. Ryan waited until day 4 to reach out. Texted. This is going too far. We're open to discussing partnership. Let's not ruin this. Ruin what? The thing they tried to steal? I didn't answer. But my attorney did. On day 5, Taylor and Ryan received a second letter, this time from the venture capital firm they'd pitched to, the one that had already publicly associated itself with their product launch. The VC had received a courtesy copy of the infringement claim, and their legal team had done their homework. That same afternoon, I received a LinkedIn message. Hi Alexis. I'm a partner at Pacific Vista Ventures. We were recently made aware of a trademark dispute involving Memora. Would you be open to a private conversation to clarify your position and discuss possible alignment? I scheduled the call for Friday at 2 p.m. The meeting was surprisingly short. I showed them the timeline of my filings, screen-shared the original Figma and code logs, walked them through my documentation, all of it signed, dated, and indisputably mine. I stayed calm. Measured. No emotion. Just clean, airtight facts. The head partner, a woman named Julia, leaned back in her chair and said, "So to be clear, you created this product, filed protections months ago, and shared it in confidence with 2 people who then launched it without your consent?" Yes. And you have no interest in joining their company? I smiled. I have no interest in joining a stolen version of my idea. There was a pause. Then Julia said, "What if we removed them?" I blinked. Excuse me? You have the stronger claim. The brand is yours. The idea, the tech, the foundation came from you. What if instead of a lawsuit, we buy your rights directly, transfer ownership, and bring you on board as creative lead? I stared at her. Not because I was surprised at the offer, but because I wasn't. I had prepared for this. We negotiated terms over the weekend. The offer included a 6-figure upfront buyout for IP rights. Retention of 22% equity in the company. Full public recognition as the sole founder. The title of Chief Creative Officer. A 3-year executive contract with salary, stock options, and full creative control. And most importantly, Ryan and Taylor's immediate removal from any operational role. My attorney reviewed the deal and called me that Sunday night. It's clean. They're giving you the company. Without the baggage. I signed on Monday morning. The announcement came later that week. Pacific Vista Ventures has formally acquired the digital memory platform Memora, and is thrilled to partner with original creator Alexis Carter, who will lead the company into its next phase as Chief Creative Officer. There was no mention of Taylor or Ryan. They were quietly phased out. Scrubbed from the website. Their launch posts disappeared one by one. Their names no longer linked to the product they'd tried to claim. I heard Ryan tried to pitch a new app within a month, something vague about mindfulness, but no one backed it. Taylor deactivated her Instagram. Some mutual acquaintances said she moved to Austin. I didn't ask. Because I had work to do. Memora was finally mine, legally, publicly, operationally. But more than that, it had a team. A roadmap. A real shot at becoming something meaningful. I spent long nights in the co-working space with our developers. Rebuilt the UI from scratch. Refined the storytelling experience. Introduced new features, voiceover storytelling, legacy tagging, shareable family timelines. And every time I reviewed a beta update, I smiled, not out of pride, but out of relief. Because I didn't have to fight anymore. I didn't have to justify what was mine. I had taken it back, piece by piece. And no one could steal it again. A year later, I was standing backstage at the National Tech and Memory Innovation Awards, gripping a glass trophy engraved with the words, "Most Innovative New Platform, Memora." Around me, photographers were calling my name, flashes bouncing off every reflective surface. The ballroom was packed, VCs, journalists, creators, CEOs in sharp black suits and stiff white smiles. But I wasn't intimidated. Because I hadn't walked in through the side door. I'd walked through fire to get here. Memora had taken off. Within the first 6 months under my creative lead, we secured contracts with 3 major hospice networks, a pilot program in Miami-Dade public schools, and thousands of personal users who shared heartbreaking, beautiful, and deeply human memories through our platform. Weddings, memorials, coming-of-age stories, all stitched together with voice, video, and visual storytelling in a way no one else had captured. We'd hit 250K users. Launched in 4 languages. Got featured on the homepage of Product Hunt. But nothing felt quite like that night. I adjusted the mic, the applause fading just enough to make the silence feel intimate. "I'd like to thank the team behind Memora," I began, "the engineers who believed in the vision, the users who trusted us with their stories, and the investors who saw what this could be before it was fully built." I paused, just long enough. "And I'd also like to thank 2 people who aren't in this room tonight, Taylor and Ryan." A few people in the crowd shifted, a few heads tilted. "I'm not thanking them for their support," I continued, "or for their loyalty. I'm thanking them for teaching me one of the most important lessons any creator can learn. That inspiration might come from the heart. But ownership lives in the paperwork." Laughter. A small ripple of applause. Even Julia, the VC partner who had brought me in, cracked a grin. I finished my speech, exited the stage, and found myself in a whirlwind of handshakes and congratulations. I handled them all gracefully, graciously, but I wasn't high on the praise. I wasn't even thinking about the trophy in my hand. I was thinking about the version of me who had sat on the floor of her apartment that Sunday morning, holding a phone and a broken heart, staring at a launch post that was never meant to be hers. She had stayed quiet. Calm. But she had taken notes. And now, she was here. That version of me had become the woman walking out of the venue with a team of 12 behind her, a signed licensing deal with 2 national archives, and a calendar booked with product launches and speaking events through the next year. As for Taylor and Ryan? Taylor had taken a marketing job in Austin, working for a B2B SaaS company I'd never heard of. Ryan was freelancing as a brand consultant. Occasionally, I'd see one of them pop up on LinkedIn, trying to reinvent themselves with vague titles like creative strategist or product co-founder. But no one mentioned Memora. Their names were gone from the industry that had once posted their launch photos. There was no scandal, no expose, no dramatic takedown. Just absence. Quiet. The kind of disappearance that doesn't require noise, only truth and time. I never blocked them. I didn't need to. I'd outlasted them. Not with rage. Not with revenge. But with a registration number. A contract. And a vision that had never belonged to them to begin with. And that, more than the trophy, the valuation, or the applause, was the moment I knew. I hadn't just won. I'd reclaimed every inch of what was mine. And I'd done it on my terms. It's been 2 years since I stood on that stage, trophy in hand, the name Memora projected behind me in bold serif font, my font. A lot has changed since then. We're now a team of over 40. We opened a satellite office in Austin and launched our Memora Legacy product line for families looking to preserve generational stories across time. Our platform is used in 6 countries, 5 school districts, and even by a few notable figures whose names I never thought I'd see on our user dashboard. Every Monday, I sit at the same desk where Memora was born, in a 2-bedroom apartment with warm light and a massive corkboard still covered in sticky notes, scribbled sketches, and screenshots of my first Figma drafts. I haven't changed offices, even though the company could pay for a glass corner view. This space is still mine. Some mornings, I reach into the bottom drawer, pull out the original sketchbook. Pages bent, coffee stained, full of ideas scribbled in Sharpie and sharp sadness. There's a post-it note on the inside cover in my mother's handwriting. It says, "File first. Pitch later. Love always, Mom." I don't read it every day, but when I do, it still stings, in the best possible way. Like a scar that doesn't hurt anymore, but reminds you that you healed. I haven't spoken to Taylor or Ryan since the letter. I never received an apology. No confession. No closure. And I'm okay with that. The truth is, I don't think they ever believed they did anything wrong. That's the danger in people who blur boundaries. They see themselves as bold, not cruel. Opportunistic, not dishonest. To them, I was just someone who wouldn't notice. And for a while, they were right. But here's the thing about building something in silence, it forces you to listen more carefully. To pay attention. To document. To protect what matters before the world even knows it exists. Because when someone finally does try to take it, you'll be ready. People ask me all the time now, what's the best advice you'd give a young founder? I used to say things like know your market or build a great team. Now, I just say, don't confuse trust with protection. You can trust people and still have them sign paperwork. They usually laugh. But the ones who've been burned? They nod. Last month, I was invited to speak at a university entrepreneurship panel. After the session, a young woman approached me, eyes wide, clutching a spiral notebook full of sketches. She leaned in and whispered, "How do I know if my idea is good enough to protect?" I smiled. "If it came from you, it's good enough. But protect it anyway." She laughed, nervously. "Even from friends?" I looked her in the eye and said gently, "Especially from friends." She nodded, slowly, and I saw it land. There's a certain weight that comes with being the one who caught the fire early. Who turned betrayal into blueprints? Who didn't fold under the shock of being underestimated, but used it as fuel? I carry that weight proudly. Not because I wanted it, but because I survived it. And if I could go back? No, I wouldn't change what Taylor and Ryan did. I wouldn't undo the pain. Because their theft made me sharper. Smarter. Unshakable. They launched a product. I launched a legacy. And the next time someone tells me I'm too quiet, too trusting, or too careful, I'll hand them a copy of our annual report. With my name at the top. Under the title. Founder. Chief Creative Officer. Majority Stakeholder. Because in the end, the most powerful revenge isn't rage. It's ownership. Paperwork. And peace. And that's how I learned that quiet confidence, backed by preparation, is more powerful than any apology. Has anyone ever stolen something you built? Drop your story in the comments. Like this story? Subscribe to EN True Tales for a new revenge story every day. And send this to a friend who needs to hear, protect your ideas first.